Fackenthall. I live in Albany, New York. My wife and I moved here almost 3 years ago, and we, for those who know Albany, New York, we live in the Delaware Avenue neighborhood, kind of close to town, very diverse neighborhood, closely knit, small little backyards, lots of trees. We enjoy it. Norma Malfatti asked me to put together a brief video on what it means to abide in creation. She knows my love of the outdoors, and she thought that I could share how I deal with COVID-19. My message has changed since the needless death of George Floyd and the discrimination of people based on the color of their skin. I can only pray that George's death will lead us into new life and to no longer not hear those cries, "I can't breathe." Not only did I have to change my message, I also figured I would have to change the Bible verse that I picked out. I went back and reread the verse from Colossians. And not only did I think it was still perfect, it was still very relevant, and I was overwhelmed by how this verse still speaks to me for both viruses, for COVID-19 and for racial discrimination. For COVID-19, that started 3 months ago, and of course discrimination that's been with us for many, many, many generations. The verse is from chapter 1, Colossians. It's verse 16. "For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers, all things have been created through him and for him." What phrase or word jumps out at you from that reading? Well, I think it's time for me to start talking about what it means for me to abide in creation. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I lived there most of my life. I was so fortunate to have an uncle who enjoyed spending time with me. He was the fire chief in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania before retiring. He loved the outdoors. He loved bird watching, and although I didn't share that love with him at the time, he did plant that seed in me. Going back to that verse that I said before, and what stood out, what phrase or word stood out to you, and what stood out to me was God has created visible and invisible things. That's what stood out to me. Visible and invisible. My uncle's love of birding was visible. My love for birding was invisible. Funny story is my daughter, who just turned 25, she hates birds. She's afraid of birds. So, go figure. Visible and invisible. How COVID-19 and racial discrimination is both visible and invisible. So, during these difficult times, I like to step out into my backyard. It's where I am right now. I like to sit down and read. I like to pray, and I like to meditate. And I also like to watch birds. Believe it or not, there's quite a variety of birds that come through this area in town here, especially warblers. Every spring, these little pint-sized 4 to 5 inch beautifully colored birds come through this area, all of upstate New York. And they flit around the trees and they sing their little hearts out. Sometimes these beautiful birds can be seen and sometimes only heard. And they're visible or invisible. It takes a trained eye to identify them. But you too can identify them. All it needs is a nice field guide, a decent pair of binoculars, some time, some patience, and you too can enjoy the birds in your area. A little bit about warblers. There's about 50 different warblers that come through North America. 30 of those can be seen in upstate New York. Some of these birds are appropriately named by their parents. There's the black and white warbler, all black and white, mostly white with black stripes. There's the black-throated green warbler, there's the black-throated blue warbler, there's the yellow warbler. It's just all yellow, easy to identify. And then there's the yellow-rumped warbler. It's got a yellow rump, pretty easy to identify. There's some warblers that are named after people. These were mostly the ornithologists who came here in the 1800s and were searching the North America, and they were finding all kinds of new birds, and they were naming them, some after themselves, some after friends. There's also quite a few birds geographically named: Cape May warbler, Kentucky warbler, Canada warbler, prairie warbler. There's a Nashville warbler. Nashville warbler was named by John Audubon, and he was in Nashville, Tennessee. He saw the bird, he named it the Nashville warbler. The Nashville warbler winters in South America and breeds in northern Canada, but it's called the Nashville warbler. So enough about birds. I just wanted to let you know that this is how I abide in nature. And I hope that I sparked in you an image of maybe how you abide in creation. I hope that this sparks a new connection between you and your abide group, your small group. And I just wanted to say too that I am very thankful that I am a member of an abide small group. The love and support I get from them is a testament of how God is